Welcome to Get Better Basketball Live. I'm Coach DeMarco, and today my guest is Garrett Hickey, basketball coach at Fairfield Prep and FastModel contributor. Today, I have challenged Coach Hickey to give me his top 5 plays from March Madness. You're not going to want to miss this episode, as this is just one of many plays that Coach Hickey has shared during March Madness that could be in his top 5. So make sure you hit that like button, turn on your notifications, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great video breakdowns each and every week. Another Get Better Basketball Live is up now. Coach DeMarco here with Get Better Basketball Live, and today my guest is Coach Garrett Hickey, Associate Head Coach at Fairfield Prep. Coach, how you doing today?
Good. How you doing, Coach? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing very well, and I'm excited to have you on tonight because obviously you and I both followed March Madness very, very closely, and I know you had a ton of stuff out there on FastModel as a FastModel contributor, and what I really appreciate is that it was both from the men's game and the women's game. So there was a ton of sets that you went through, and today we're gonna see your top 5, which I know is a very difficult task. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to ask you, I know you watched a ton of basketball these last few weeks, and X's and O's wise, what are some of your key takeaways from watching these NCAA tournament games?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of emphasis, on both sides, men and women, on the pick and roll. But I thought what was really interesting is all the different ways that teams were getting themselves into their ball screen game. It wasn't just go set a high ball screen and go off of it. There was a lot of different stuff, dribble handoffs, boomerang passes. I mean, it was just a ton of stuff, a ton of action to get into the ball screens, which I thought was really cool. And then just like the emphasis on, matchups and getting matchups with, the specific sets, because there were times on the men's and women's side where we're watching the same teams, every other night, and they mixed up sets or they had sets that they just, tweaked one or two things to go at somebody on the defensive end or to get the mismatch they wanted. And I thought that was really cool and really interesting to dive into.
I'm curious. I know you watched a ton of games. Is there an action that you saw different teams using, or even one team that, really stood out to you that is something you really liked?
Yeah, I think for me it was the use of the ghost screens. UCLA did it a lot, and the reason that stuck out to me is that I think that's something that can be used on any level. That's really easy to teach. And it's really hard to guard because especially lower levels, middle school, high school, defensive coaches are talking to their players about yelling out, calling ball screen, and they're so focused on the ball screen that no one ever talks about, well, what would you do if the guy doesn't end up screening and he just slips it, or he just ends up ghosting it and going right through and the ball handler dribbles right by. And I think that's a really good action that we saw obviously at both levels using it, and I think that's something that we can all take from.
Yeah, UCLA did a really nice job with that, and I feel like every time that happens, the two defenders often freeze, the one on the ball handler and then the screener's defender, and it opens up an opportunity to kind of attack the basket. So before we jump into X's and O's, I wanted to ask you on the defensive side of the game, because again, I know you watched a lot of games. Was there a team that you really enjoyed, men's or women's, throughout the tournament to really see them, get after it on the defensive end?
Sure. Well, I think after last night's championship game, I think I would have to say Baylor's defense. I think if I didn't say that would be wrong of me. But obviously they were good. But I thought I'm not a zone coach, so I always find it interesting, watching zone defenses. I thought obviously Syracuse, I did a little bit of a breakdown on their zone and just kind of how they do it, because it's so different than what I think coaches say. 2-3 zone, they just sit there and they rotate. It's really like man, and they trap out of it, and I thought that was really interesting. I think Loyola Chicago's ball screen defense was really, really good, and stuff. I think UConn women, I'm kind of biased because I'm from Connecticut, so I'm a huge UConn fan, and I'm a big fan of Gino, and I think that they do a really good job defensively. Obviously, that last game they didn't do a great job on it, but I think that they do a good job with their scouts, and taking away the other team's best player and making the other role players on the team beat you, especially on the women's side. So that's what I would say for that.
Those are some great teams. I definitely enjoyed all of them. Loyola Chicago definitely being one of them. And the Arizona women's team actually stood out to me as well. I thought they did a really nice job, pressuring UConn in that game. And they really didn't make anything easy. And obviously, like you said, Baylor, man, they really got after it the entire game and did a great job. So I know for today, we're going to talk about, you're going to share out a baseline out of bounds, a sideline, and then half court set, just in general, just to kind of take a look at some of those great sets. And then we're going to get into that top 5. And as I said, I am very interested. I know I have some favorite plays along the way, and very interested to see what you have to share, and appreciate the fact that you're going to look at, the men's and women's game, because there was a lot of great stuff going on in both NCAA tournaments. So let's jump right into the first set you're going to share here. All right, Coach, we're going to take a look here at Michigan half court set, which love the stuff that they ran in the tournament this year.
Yeah, they had a bunch of really good stuff. A lot of their stuff was out of the Horns series and 1-4 across, but this one, I chose this one just because I had mentioned it earlier about the different ways to kind of start or initiate your ball screen offense. So on this one, it's just kind of a simple 4-out, 1-in. They had the 5 on the strong side elbow, and instead of just having the 5 go and set the ball screen and initiating the pick and roll, what they did was they had the strong side corner guy actually screen for the 5 first. Then the 5 went into the ball screen, and then what they did was they actually ended up just swinging the ball the opposite side, and then they got the post feed entry. I think that I don't know this for sure, but I'm almost positive this was probably a scout specific set, and the other team was switching, and they got the mismatch on the 5, and they knew that once the guy rolled, they were going to have the guy with a guard on him on the block, and they just passed it inside, and they got a nice easy post feed and a layup for I think it was for actually an and one when they ran this set. So I thought that was really good, just a different way to get into the action. And obviously then if the pick and roll wasn't there, they just reversed it and had a nice easy post feed.
There's a lot of teams out there who run 4-out stuff too. So I feel like, if teams are switching, like you said, if it was game plan specific, this is something that they could do. And, even if you don't have a great post player, you can create some type of mismatch in the post running this set. So that's a really great one. What do you have next for us?
Sure. Next up, we have this is one of my favorite baseline out of bounds plays. So this is the Colorado men's team ran this, and it's not really a box set. They had a stack on the strong side, and then they had the 2 guys, one guy in the block, one guy in the elbow, and it's another way of just getting into a pick and roll out of your baseline out of bounds. So they threw the ball into the 5, the 4, and the 2, cut out to the corners. And then 3 set a little bit of a down screen for the inbounder, and they came off of it. I think it was supposed to be a dribble handoff. They actually didn't do a dribble handoff. The 5 passed it to him and then went into the ball screen, but I think you could also throw a dribble handoff in there as well. And then they just went right into a little pick and roll with the 1 coming off the 5 rolling, and the 3 lifting behind. And I think, again, that's a nice baseline out of bounds play that you have, because, you're reading the defense once you get the ball in out of the pick and roll. So you don't necessarily have to have 4 different baseline out of bounds plays. You can have this one play and, just make the right read, and you have almost 3 different plays in one. Creighton also did this too with like a 4 flat on the baseline out of bounds, but I chose this one. I'm not a huge fan of the over the top pass, especially at the lower levels. I think that's kind of a tough pass to make for high school kids or lower than that. So I picked this one because I thought this one was a little bit of an easier one.
And as you mentioned too, Coach, different ways to get into that ball screen action. And, this is a great example on the baseline out of bounds. And now we have a sideline out play, and curious to see if you went back to that ball screen action again or not.
So this time I actually did. I stole this one we got this from Michigan State, the men's side. I just thought this was a really good set that again had like a couple different options. You could use this and the clock. They had the back screen for the inbounder. On this specific play, what happened here is that they hit the one dribbled over, the 4 came off of the back screen. They actually hit the 4, and then the 2 and the 5 were setting a stagger screen for the 3, and the 5 actually just slipped and made a read to the rim, and the 4 passes right to the 5. I think that was more of a read on the play, but I also just like the play in general for an ISO for the 4 on the block, and then you have your shooter coming off of the stagger on the other side.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites as well. I think they ran this at the end of the first half in that first 4 game, and I saw a lot of, as I mentioned, the staggered into a dribble handoff or staggered screens throughout the tournament. And you watched a lot of games and probably saw a lot of staggered screens. And from your perspective, what is it that teams really like about an action like this, where you have that staggered screen and you have the offensive player coming off it? I know the slip was probably a little bit of a read as he went to the basket, but what is it that makes it so difficult to defend the staggered screen? And I have a follow-up to that as well, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a regular stagger screen is just difficult because there's a bunch of different ways to guard it. You can stay on the guy's hip. You can go through both of them. You can go through the first one and try to go under the second. There's a ton of different reads, but I think what makes it hard is when you start having that misdirection where, like on this play, the 1 is dribbling away from the stagger screen, and so there's a lot of like attention on the back screen and the 4 and making sure that pass is hard, and then you just have the 3 who set a screen. It's basically a the screener coming off the stagger. So now the guy who's guarding 3, he's probably trying to bump 4 as he's coming off of that back screen, and now this guy's going to take off and go through another 2 screens. And if you're not trailing it, or if you're trailing it, the guy can curl. If you go under, the guy can fade behind one of the screens for a shot. I just think because there's reads to it, I think it's just such a hard action to guard. And even if you have a really good defender, if they do one thing, you can just have a read for it. And I think that just makes it really difficult.
So as we look at these first 3 plays, before we get into the top 5, just curious, a play that kind of transcends across all levels. The first one, right down to this third one here. Which play do you think is really applicable? Like, you could run it at the high school level. Obviously, it can be run at the college level, but it's something that you feel like can really work well at different. I'm sure all 3 of them could to some degree, but if you had to pick one of these sets, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, for the high school level and then thinking about, those different levels.
Yeah, well, I think, in my opinion, I would probably go back to the baseline out of bounds play, because I think at any level, and especially the earlier you start, the better. It's so important to teach the ball screen reads. So I think I would say the baseline out of bounds play is definitely the right one to go with.
All right, Coach, pretty excited here. We're going to jump into this top 5 list, and I know this is a tough challenge, but very interested to see your top 5 plays.
All right, so what I did was I started with number 5, and I'm going to work my way up to number 1.
Awesome.
So for me, the first one that I have right here is South Florida women's basketball ran this. It's a 1-4 set into a double stagger. And so the first thing that really came to my eye about this was the way they started this was like there was just a ton of action that was really hard to guard. You can see even just looking at the first diagram, it's kind of like all over the place a little bit. But they just had, the 5 pop into the free throw line, the 4 pops out to the top of the key, the 2 kind of just curls around to the opposite block. And while that's all happening at the same time, the 1 is just passing to the 3. And then it's just a ball reversal. So we get a little bit of a back screen for a cut over to the opposite block. And so that was their first option there, is to see if we can get that little easy bounce pass or post entry for a layup. And then we just had right into a double stagger, 5 and 4 setting it for 2, and then 5 and 4 setting it for the 3. And I love double stagger plays. We run a few of them at prep at the high school level. And like we were talking about earlier, it's really hard to guard 1 stagger. I think it's even harder to guard 2 staggers, especially when they're back to back. And so I think this play was really good. They got a wide open three out of this all the way at the end for the three guards. So this was number 5 for me.
Really like the movement, as you mentioned, before they get into kind of their initial action, they're making that defense work and move a little bit, and then they end up setting that double staggered screen. So some of that false movement, gets the defense moving and thinking, and I think too, it affects the help defense and, them getting into position. So that's a really good one, and love any type of double staggered screen. So we're off to a good start here.
All right, number 4. People, we've probably all seen this one on Twitter, the videos going around, but Gonzaga ran like a great circle action against the zone defense. And so I think this is really simple to run too at any level. They execute it very well, but I think if you teach it the right way, it's really good. So for the diagram, I kind of broke it down into the 3 steps that they used. But if you can think of it, as all of this is going on pretty much at like a motion. So everything's happening at the same time. So the one's initiating with the pass. The one makes the first like cut through the zone and the 3 fills. As that's going on, the 4 is circling around the zone to the elbow, while the 2 is reversing into 3 and 3 is dribbling over. And what they did here is 3 hit 4 in the middle of the zone. And as that was going on, Timmy was circling around behind the zone again and just kind of ducked in right behind the zone, and they had a bounce pass for a layup. But they ran this a couple times. They got the bounce pass a few times. But what happened was after they got the bounce pass layup a couple times, they actually started sagging off the 4, and then the 4 was just turning around and had a wide open, elbow jumper right in the middle of the zone, or just had like a 1 dribble pull up or 1 dribble floater. So I thought this is really good. It's simple, but it's a little bit of a different action against the zone because you're having some constant movement, constant cutting.
Yeah, what I like about Gonzaga with their zone offense is, some of it's good basketball. They're flashing a player into the zone, they're ducking someone in behind the zone, and I like obviously too the 2-player. I think it was Kispert, at least in the example I saw, but he went from wing to corner. So if they cheated in to help as that player ducked in behind the zone, it's a nice easy read to hit out to the corner player too. So they were just very smooth. I know they didn't have a great national championship game, but I saw them against zone defenses a couple of times this year, and I just felt like they were very smooth, and they just made really good reads and simple actions, and a lot of those, flash high, look low, or look opposite corner, types of looks. So they did a really, really nice job, Gonzaga. And I like that you mentioned too, they didn't always hit that pass, the duck in behind the zone. Sometimes they took advantage of the shot as well. So really good play. Great job by Gonzaga. And I know they also had a couple of other good zone plays as well. So great job by the Zags. So what are we looking at with number 3 here?
So number 3, we have a box set from USC. And I thought this one was it was a little bit different. I'd never really seen the action set up this way out of a box. So on this one, the 1 dribbles over, and as they're dribbling over, 3 actually curls around and goes behind a stagger almost, set by the 2 and 4 to the block. And so they use that as trying to get, an ISO for the 3 on a post up, and then the 2 set a down screen for the 4 coming out to the top of the key for option number 2. So a little bit of a different kind of look with some similar action that we saw throughout the whole tournament. But the other thing that I really liked about this is they had their 5 shoot out to the wing. And so it took away, a shot blocker or the tall guy out of the middle. So if the 3 got the ball, he was working on by himself. And then on this down screen action, all right, there's really no help side. So the 2 could slip it, the 4, if both guys stay with the 2, the 4 has a wide open shot at the top of the key. So I thought this was really good.
Coach, this is a great one. Great share. Well deserving of that number 3 spot in your top 5. And I do love that kind of reverse, almost, double staggered down to the block. But then you have the screener action in there. And as you mentioned, that 5 popping out to the corner to take that defender out there. Do you recall in the game what option did they end up hitting the screener at the top, or did they end up dumping inside? What do they typically like to do in this? And I know it's really a read type of situation, but just curious in this action what they did.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think this was out of a timeout, and I think they went inside to the 3 for a post up just to get an easy score. And I think the guy ended up getting fouled and going to the free throw line.
Yeah, great way to get the ball inside. And and again, I think this is something you could use at different levels. If you want to get a player the ball inside and take advantage of a matchup, this is a good way to do it. And then you have the shot at the top of the key. So this is a really good one. I think some coaches are going to be stealing this one.
For sure. All right, number 2. We had a Georgetown Hoya, and again, I picked this one just because it was a little bit of a different action here. But this was definitely set up as a quick hitter. So they came down. I believe it was actually like almost in transition, and they had the 5 and the 4 set in the stagger screen for the 3. And then what they did was they had the 2 who was on the strong side corner just sprint across and set like a diagonal back screen for the 5 who's setting the second screen in the stagger. And he just went right underneath it, and they got a wide open layup. Almost like, I think they ran it a couple times, and I even saw them run it before the tournament as well. But they got some wide open stuff for their 5 just off of this.
Yeah, not surprised thinking about Patrick Ewing here and getting the ball inside. So, a little screener action to get that player the ball inside. And, seeing a lot of these players, at least the last couple, there's some screener action involved. And, I think that is such a difficult thing for defenses, because obviously they have to worry about that initial action, but then also covering the initial screener. And we see that here with Georgetown. So let's take a look at the next one. This is a big one.
Yeah. So number 1, like I said earlier, I'm a little biased, so I went with the UConn women. But the action here was seen. I saw this action out of a horn set, I think, on the women's side by 4 or 5 different teams, and then on the men's side by like another 2 or 3. And so what I chose this one just because it was a little bit different with a little bit more action to it, but it was kind of a wide box set. And number 3 was Paige Beckers during this play, and they set a down screen for her. The 1 passed it to her, and then it was a little bit of like a boomerang shuffle pass right back to the 1. And then while that was going on, the 2 went to the strong side corner, and the 3 just curled right around the 5, and they got a wide open layup on that little pass from 1-4 and then 4-3. So out of the horn set, I saw it a bunch of times where they would have a 1-4 across, and the guard would Iverson cut, and instead of completing the cut to the wing, they would pass the ball at the elbow, and then the guard would just curl right around that last person on the elbow for a layup. So it was similar actions that other teams did on both sides, but I thought this one was a little bit different, especially with the boomerang pass or the shuffle pass back right back to the 1, and then kind of the quick cut around after the pass to 4.
Yeah, and UConn women definitely ran some great stuff in the tournament, as did all of these teams. So can really appreciate in a kind of a diverse grouping, different types of sets that you shared out here. And if you had to pick, you might be biased, you might go with the UConn women's team, but if you had to pick a team in the tournament, let's do both sides. Let's do men's and women's. So we'll start with the men's side of it. If you had to pick a team that you thought offensively really executed well throughout the tournament, they had some nice actions, but just played well offensively, who would you go with for the men's game?
I kind of always look at teams. I don't want to say teams that don't have a lot of skill, but there's a lot of times where I think plays are drawn up for guys who are obviously just really, really good, or girls who are really, really good. So like, I think the Loyola Chicago stuff, we had talked about it earlier. I think that's stuff that if you have some solid fundamental players and you just teach it the right way, you can get wide open stuff off of it. You don't necessarily need to have, a stud scorer or a stud athlete on your team to kind of use the stuff that they did. So I would say Loyola Chicago on the men's side. And then the women's side, I think that Stanford women ran a lot of good stuff. They had a lot of good box sets with some like elevator screens. And again, things that obviously they have some very skilled players on that team since they won a national championship, but they just did things that were like really fundamentally sound. And if you can use them, and I think they can kind of be used at all different levels. So those would be my two choices.
I know you do a lot out, out in kind of the Twitterverse and on social media in general to really share the game. And I know that's a hashtag that you put out there. I think it's even in your, at the end of your name now as well, Garrett Hickey, share the game. So just curious, if coaches want to be able to check out some of your stuff that you put out there. I know you did a great breakdown on the Syracuse zone, as you mentioned earlier. You share a ton of stuff. You're one of my favorite people to follow, especially recently with all the March Madness stuff. You really put a ton of great content out. So just curious how coaches can kind of check out your stuff, and then also like the Syracuse zone breakdown that you did and some of that other stuff as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the hashtag is hashtag share the game. It's also the name of my blog, which is right on my Twitter. My handle is at Coach Hickey, HICKEY 5 on Twitter. And basically what the blog is every Monday I put a poll out with two options about what the blog could be about, and then I just let people vote on it, and then whatever wins I write about. And it's not anything like my opinion or anything like that. It's a lot of times it's just stuff that I've seen or that I shared out. A lot of it is plays or X's and O's or practice drills, whatever it might be. So that's one thing you can look at. And then what I've kind of been doing recently is I have a lot of just resources from over the years of coaching that I find helpful for me, and that I also always like to, talk about with other people, other coaches on Twitter. So I usually share out something where it's all free. Just like it, retweet it, and then sign up on the Google form, and I send an email out with the research. Like yesterday, I created some really cool, play end of game situation play chart that you can make as a coach, and you can just have in your pocket. Because I'm sure like everybody else, I'm always at the end of games, you're trying to draw stuff up and think about, okay, what do I have for this situation? And so I have like a color coded thing that I just made that you can plug in all your plays that you have and just have it with you all the time. And I think that's something that could be useful. And then, like you said, the Syracuse zone breakdown stuff that's on my blog. The blog is free as well, so you can go on there, and the link to my blog is on my Twitter bio too. So it's all about sharing the game and creating a culture on Twitter and anywhere else, any social media platform where coaches are just constantly talking about the game and sharing the resources and knowledge they have.
That's awesome, Coach. And as I said multiple times, I appreciate all that you share out there and the FastModel diagrams, and really today, just the diversity in the plays that you shared from teams that made it deep into the tournament, teams that did not make it as deep, the men's game, the women's game, and just different sets in the half court, baseline, out of bounds, really everything. So feel like you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to basketball. And, I look forward to continuing to check out your blog and the stuff that you share out there. And I hope you keep it up right after March Madness. Keep this rolling, and you do a really great job. So thanks for all that you do to help share and really grow the game of basketball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll still have some X's and O's come out because there's some JUCO playoffs coming up that are still out there. So I'll be diving into that stuff too, because they have some great stuff at that level. And I think in California and stuff like that, the JUCO level is just starting up because they were on shutdown. So basketball, Division I ended last night, but not basketball, which is lucky for us.
I love it, Coach. You're a basketball junkie just like me. And you know what? I look forward to hopefully having you on again in the future. And we'll talk hoops again. This was a lot of fun tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.